Welcome my friends, today we are playing Phat or Flat with Copycat, the latest card releasing here in Marvel Snap, and with my fingers on the beating pulse of the community, this is the most highly anticipated card of the season, and she is bringing with her an entire new ability archetype, an entire new ability category. Is she going to be able to live up to the hype and make a splash in the meta, or is she going to fade away into obscurity like so many other recent overhyped releases? We're going to be breaking that all down alongside her synergies, her counters, and even the decks that I think she's going to be able to thrive on in day one. Let's get rolling. Starting position is a 3-5 that does something that is kind of actually a fascinating starting position, because the 3-5 stat line is just good enough that almost any ability paired onto Copycat is going to be recommending her for play. We were in this position with Nocturne just not too long ago. Turns out Nocturne, with the ability to move and change a location with the 3-5 stat line, is just good enough to toe the line on almost any meta deck. And of course also the location manipulation and the moving at will does add a serious level of utility, but Copycat is bringing utility as well. When you draw this, steal the text from the bottom card of your opponent's deck. Okay, beginning. When you draw this, they have not set this off in bold with the colon the way they do on reveal or ongoing, but when you draw on draw, this is its own ability category, and this is the ability category that I personally have been asking for as a new ability type since the very beginning of the game. I could easily see fleshing out a couple other cards with on-draw abilities, and then right now we have Blink and Lockjaw to be able to put cards back into the deck. We get a couple more of those cards. Entire new archetype. All right, let me know in the comments down below what do you think of this idea and what other abilities you might like to see. The developers gave me some giveaway codes. I'll be fishing in the comments from this video to give those away, so a little extra encouragement, but it's also going to be a fascinating discussion down there. Finishing out our discussion on Copycat's ability, stealing the text from the bottom card of your opponent's deck. Stealing is the verbiage that is given to Rogue, so the opponent's card is going to be leached. It will have no ability whatsoever. Copycat will gain all of the text from that card, but she will maintain her form, so she will still be called Copycat. She will maintain her stat line at 3-5. That's relevant for, say, Thor. If Copycat copied Thor, when you play Copycat, she will still create Mjolnir, but Mjolnir is coded to only buff Thor, and because Copycat is not transformed into Thor, she wouldn't get the buff from Mjolnir. It's a very fringe case, but honestly, with Arishem at such a high play rate at the moment, you are all but guaranteed to see Copycat, if you continue to play enough games, take on pretty much every ability in the game, which is it adds a wild amount of variance to the card. But if you start scrolling through just the list of all cards in the game, and then you imagine that ability, copy and paste it onto a 3-5 stat line, I'm coming away thumbs up on the vast majority. So I'm looking at Copycat as being a pretty spicy add-on. Now, of course, there are going to be cards that are very situational, cards that need a lot of other combo pieces around them to get the value out of their abilities, and so that's where we're going to have to either lean on her stat line to be relevant, or simply hope that we have other options in the hand, other options in the tank to be able to play and just avoid using Copycat in those positions. So where is she really going to be able to thrive and come alive? I have three main areas. Arishem is the most boring. He can just be a good cards deck. I think Copycat is gonna fall into his category where she could be just good enough to run inside the Arishem Loki mush that is the meta leader at the moment. More specifically, in a honed-in Loki deck, I love the idea of using Copycat, because while Loki is giving you all of the opponent's cards, having just extra ways like Zemo has in the past to be able to delve into what the opponent is running and start to access some of their combos has been really useful, and I think Copycat plays exactly into that game plan. Here with Cable, we also catch a through line for the Mill style play, where I think Copycat is really going to thrive. Spoilers, as we're going to look at next. But we also have this fun ability here. Copycat is taking an ability from an opposing card. It's been confirmed that Copycat, obviously for you playing Copycat, get to see what card has been copied. The opponent will not see what card has been taken from them. They wouldn't be drawing it anyway, it's at the bottom of the deck, but you're getting information about both what they're playing and now a combo piece they don't have, and Cable is doing the exact same thing for you. So as you continue to take pieces of the puzzle away from their game plan, it's going to end up falling apart, or at least that's what you are hoping to accomplish. I really want to spend a little bit more time looking at Mill here because I think Copycat can do amazing things for this new archetype. It's pretty interesting to think about because on the one hand, Mill was doing great before Arishem, and now with Arishem, not been doing nearly as great because Arishem just has bottomless resources within the deck. So it's going to be interesting to see how much the deck can evolve to be able to combat that specific matchup, which it absolutely has to if it wants to remain relevant in the meta. It's going to have to start blending in some junk into the Mill. I think it is possible. You know, we're going to be testing it on stream as soon as the card releases, so tune in. It's going to be a wild ride. But if Yondu is taking cards away, Gladiator is taking cards away, and Zemo is taking cards away, then the opponent is in all likelihood going to be actually in a position where they have to draw and then see if they're going to use this card that Copycat stole the ability from. So you have yet another way to attack a piece that then actually finds its way into their hand, whereas in all these other deck styles, the card that Copycat copies and takes the ability away from is just never in the opponent's hand. It's just another way to be able to knife them, stab them. And with Zemo pulling one of their cards, Copycat Legion, you might be able to access some kind of synergy. It's unlikely, but was worth calling out. The trap cards that I've seen for Copycat in Korg and Rockslide, these guys are fascinating to think about because they cause the opponent's list to get shuffled. You could copy an ability off of a bottom card, then Korg and shuffle the deck so that the opponent is more likely to draw the card that had been copied from or been stolen from. The problem is that if you're playing these cards in any other order, like Korg and Rockslide first, then Copycat could very easily be copying a Rock, which means that she is a dead hit, and so we're having this kind of clash of different options. And I think that the utility of shuffling the opponent's deck after you have stolen an ability is not quite worth it if you are then forced to play these cards in a specific order. And the counter cards. This is where we're not really looking at pieces that are going to directly attack Copycat. I think that's actually impossible for the opponent to be able to do. They currently have no way to be able to stop a on-draw ability. Now, they could leech you to then remove whatever that ability was, but that's a really, really specific scenario and wasn't worth calling out specifically to me. I think Arishem is going to be a problem if Copycat's mostly getting shoved into the Mill style play, just because he has that built-in resiliency to that game plan and normally comes out just fine in those matchups. All of these other cards are representing different categories that we really don't want to copy from, because then our Copycat is going to be all but useless to us. Obviously, a Destroyer, or it's the worst case scenario, but any destroy specific synergy I think is going to be incredibly hard to unlock for Copycat and could actually be detrimental in many cases to wanting to play her, so we're going to want to stay away from that. Kitty Pryde could bear mentioning up here as well if Copycat is going to be returning to hand. We don't want that, except we could play it on the final turn for the stats. MODOK, the capstone for all of the discard synergies. We can, of course, play Copycat for the stats on the final turn when it can't hurt us, but it hurts our flexibility a lot if we are stealing one of those abilities. Hobgoblin, Green Goblin, we don't want Copycat sailing over to the opponent's side. And then Typhoid Mary here is representing that entire category of cards that have negative abilities themselves to balance out really beneficial stat lines. Copycat doesn't have a stat line that's beneficial enough to justify playing through a negative ability, and if the opponent does end up drawing this card that we stole from, we have made their deck better. So that kind of Shuri zero deck is going to actually be a nightmare to play against if you have Copycat. You can't really help yourself on draw. You don't have any option on Copycat doing the stealing, but of course you have the option of if you are ultimately going to play the cat or not. There's been a lot to evaluate here, my friends, a lot to think about, and I have been placing the current meta into my calculations. What is the final verdict on Copycat going to be? We're saying it's just going to be Phat with 3 keys, my friends. This is putting her on the thumbs up. Not, I think, a must grab, but I do see an enormous amount of utility for Copycat, and I love the flexibility that we saw on potential unlocks within a designated Loki style. You have Mill, you have Arishem, which is really just representing, it's a Loki hybrid deck at the moment, but it's also just good cards. And Copycat being able to fuel in any kind of good cards list, I think is really intriguing, and it's going to be the kind of card you want in your collection for deck building basics as we move forward into more options here in Snap. The overall cache is also looking super hot with Thanos and Cull Obsidian. Not the meta terrors that they were a few seasons ago, but still as the big bad status. The devs have never let Thanos go too long without being relevant in the meta, and I think that he's going to come roaring back in the future. He's had a little bit of a blip here with the Lockjaw change. The devs are clearly interested in still tinkering around there and giving him options. Fastos gave him a blink of life as well, and I see Cull Obsidian is just married to that list. It's unfortunate that it feels like you have to go for 2 of these Series 5 cards to get a complete Thanos deck, but that's just where we're at in Modern Snap, and so it's actually nice to see the thematic pairing in the cache to be able to grab them both together. If you are missing just one, I would still be recommending to dive into the cache and make sure that you flesh out your options for both that archetype and Copycat. It's a little bit spicy that I don't think that Copycat's going to belong at all in a Thanos deck specifically, but I could be surprised. Now let's roll over to the decks that I think that Copycat is going to do well in. With both Arishem and Loki decks really known commodities at the moment, I wanted to spend extra time highlighting the Mill build, which I think is a little bit more tailor-suited to letting Copycat shine. We'll see if this ends up being her best deck, but I think it is the one that is going to be the strongest synergies with her. Now, the strongest synergies with a specific card doesn't always lead to being its best list, but this one does look nasty. Yondu, Cable, Zemo, Gladiator are all able to take cards away from their deck, and Grandmaster is here just to play as soon as you can to be able to get an extra activation. Really looking at those core cards as the structure of the Mill game plan, and getting those going for us is fantastic. We do have Doc Ock to rip cards out of their hand, and you could Grandmaster that if you end up with a lane that there's no shot that you come back from based on what you pulled, but you could still get the Doc Ock on that second activation, thin their hand out even more, or just transfer his stats into another spot. So a little bit of a tricksy play that we can manage there. We're using magic to be able to extend the game and hopefully force the opponent into suboptimal plays because we've been denying them resources. Copycat feeding into that, and also the Black Bolt knocking a card out of their hand. Magic hopefully gives us more time to be able to find stature as well. I feel like I've seen a dip at the moment in cards that are the location fixers, so I'm hoping that Limbo is going to be able to survive, but we can of course play Doc Ock on top of Limbo to pull the protection onto it, so the opponent's not going to be able to throw their Nocturne across or any other location altering effects that they may have fosters. And then the Red Hulk just getting enough time to get angry enough to build up and try and win a lane on his own is here on the very high end of the list. Shang-Chi to fix whatever Doc Ock pulled, or just to be able to line up with a valuable control hit. I feel like he's come back to being essential in the meta, and Magic makes him way more reliable. That's the deck in a nutshell, and I feel like Copycat just taking that final ability from one of their cards. You're going to want to pay attention to where they're at all times and how many cards are left in the deck to know if you want what you want to be stealing and what you know the opponent is drawing, so that they end up with that stolen card, or the card with the stolen ability rather than you. But other than that, she just naturally slides into getting played on tempo, holding her a little bit, work her in however you can, and you are going to profit. So there's our full breakdown on Copycat. You know that we're going to be testing her on stream, Twitch, and YouTube as soon as she drops. So come join in, and we'll see where she takes us. Oh my gosh, guys, we got Marvel Rivals, which we did get into, and the release of Deadpool as Diner coming all together. Hopefully Copycat is going to be winning us a number of bubs so that we're also getting Cassandra Nova into the mix. stay tuned on the channel. Check right down there. I'm going to have an evaluation for Cassie as well, and you don't want to miss that. Till next time, thank you guys for watching. Keep on snapping.